Imagine you are walking through a narrow shopping street in Osaka. Suddenly, you hear the clash of cymbals, the beat of a drum, and the cry of a clarinet. Turning the corner, you see them. A group in a variety of kimonos. People carrying Japanese parasols and small denden daiko drums. They parade through the street, handing out flyers and singing promotional jingles. This is Chindonya, a Japanese street advertising method that has been a staple of Japanese culture for over 150 years. So what is Chindon-ya? Well, Chindon-ya is a troupe of street performers hired to advertise shops, events, and sales. They wear flamboyant costumes and play a mixture of traditional Japanese instruments, including the shakuhachi, a Japanese flute, the shamisen, a Japanese lute, and a variety of small Japanese instruments. Along with Western instruments such as clarinets and saxophones, they call out advertisements for local businesses. Marie Abe from the University of California describes them as a group of outlandishly costumed street musicians in Japan who are hired to advertise an employer's business. Their street performances combine sound, theater, and spectacle to transform any ordinary street into a stage. Chindonya are basically Japan's version of sign spinners. You know, the folk you see on the street twirling a sign, hyping up a grand opening? Their job, just like the sign spinners, was to grab your attention and lure you into their shop to spend money. But instead of waving around arrow-shaped signs, they turned it into a full-on art form. Music, costumes, and performance blended into advertising. They are street entertainers and vendors who use performance to sell goods. Shops need a way of standing out in the crowded city streets of Edo and modern-day Japan. Enter Chindonya, the solution to all of this. But here's the interesting part. The first known practitioner was Akametsu, a candy seller in Edo who used his voice and percussion to attract customers to his candy shop. Instead of simply shouting, he used his voice along with bells and woodblocks, hiroshigi, to create rhythmic noise that drew in customers. However, during the Edo period, Chindonya was not yet a costume parade troupe, but the DNA was already there. Akametsu had single-handedly turned sound into advertising, using percussion and rhythm to cut through city noise. But in the late 19th century, the practice had expanded. Akita Rukichi had incorporated European brass instruments into Chindonya. The vibrant soundscape of Edo merchant streets created a foundation for what would later evolve into Chindonya tradition. Mary Abe in her article explains that while Akametsu is remembered as the origin, it was not until the 1930s that Chindonya came to take the form as it does today. This mix of influences shows how Chindonya emerged at a moment where Japan was modernizing after centuries of isolation. Their very sound carried both Japanese and Western echoes, being both loud and pleasant, a hybrid that can't be considered traditional nor modern. Everyone knows Chindonya features Western instruments like the clarinets and saxophones, but what about the traditional Japanese instruments? Okay, so the denden daiko is a small, double-headed drum that has beads attached by strings on both sides that hit one of the faces, creating a rhythmic-like rattling when the handle is twisted, like so. It is a form of a traditional Chindonya instrument, and a pretty cool one at that. The shakuhachi is an end-blown bamboo flute, traditionally made from the root end of the plant. Known for its rich tonal range and ability to blend notes with subtle breath control. The shamisen, on the other hand, is a 3-stringed fretless lute with a long neck and a body covered in animal skin, played with a large plectrum called a bashi to create crisp, twanging notes. The hiroshigi consists of 2 hardwood clappers that, when struck together, create a sharp, percussive clack, like this. Pretty interesting, right? Again? By the early 20th century, Chindonya had become an urban spectacle, and its role after the Second World War had expanded. In the 1950s, as Japan rebuilt, Chindonya became common in shopping arcades and black markets. Estimates suggest about 2,500 troupes were active nationwide during this period. If you walked outside in 1955 Japan, the odds of bumping into a Chindonya are just as likely as you finding a Starbucks in downtown LA today. And they weren't just street noise, they were keepsakes. People associated them with childhood memories, festivals, and everyday urban life. However, all good things must come to an end. But in Chindonya's case, it was more of a rapid decline in the 1960s rather than an end necessarily. TV commercials, neon signs, and corporate supermarkets all replaced the need for live advertising. The 1973 oil crisis and the economic recession worsened the situation as well. At the same time, they remain a form of contemporary creativity. Festivals even continue today, keeping the tradition alive. But here's the thing, our story doesn't end here. In the 1990s, Chindonya actually experienced a revival. Despite being labeled outdated, some modern troupes have achieved financial success, generating up to $1 million in annual income. Some even incorporated modern jazz into their music. Chindonya reminds us of community. They were closely tied to everyday life, described as shomin bunka, common people's culture. In post-war Japan, their music filled neighborhood soundscapes, shaping a sense of shared public life. Even today, when digital ads dominate, their live performances reclaim the streets as spaces of interaction and memory. From street corners in the 19th century to hybrid performances in the 21st, Chindonya continues to resonate literally and culturally in Japan's urban life. So, next time you're in Japan and you hear a loud parade, remember, you could be experiencing a living piece of history. A Chindonya troupe keeping a tradition alive. Because while TV commercials can be muted, billboards ignored, and YouTube ads skipped, there's one thing you can never ignore. A person in a costume playing the denden daiko right next to your ear. Thank you guys so much, and please consider subscribing, liking this video, and commenting down below. I'll see you guys in the next one.